So Hari, you've been here in New York you're just coming up on 3 weeks for your whirlwind tour of New York City, sharing Indic knowledge with everybody. Any thoughts about your experience this trip?
I think this trip was distinctly different from my earlier trips, partly because, in the earlier trips, relatively we were quite new
Mm-hmm.
to with the story, with what we were saying and whom we were meeting. But now that I've been here, this is my third trip.
Yeah.
Remember, for salons from April, July, and now October, there are lots of people who've already sort of come across what we're saying, right?
Right.
And some of them sort of came in, met us, and so there's a lot of feedback that I got from, what was in their head from what we said, and that affected a little bit of what I think we were able to then communicate this time to the new
Mm-hmm.
people. So yeah, so I think in that sense, a little bit of a new experience,
Mm-hmm.
but I think a very useful experience. And of course, this time we did a few things differently, right? So
Right.
we had salons inside companies.
Right.
Then we had 2 events. So, so it was just a whole lot more than what we normally do. So going back, very satisfied.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah,
You ready to go back?
always. 3 weeks is about how
It's
much.
a long time.
Yeah, 3 weeks in a hotel room.
So just being a quasi New Yorker at this point, any
Right.
New York specific standout for you besides the work itself?
New York always, right? So I was telling you, I think one of the first few days that I came in, and I have this thing of sometimes walking across to the nearest Paris Baguette
Right.
for a sort of pre-dawn breakfast, which is one of the few places that's open quite early. And so you sit quietly and the city is really not woken up, and it's a wonderful feeling, right? So, and I've always enjoyed huge cities just before they wake up. And I think
Right.
there's nothing better, especially in New York, to have that moment. So yeah, that is something that I cherish every time I come, and this time particularly. I think.
Particularly.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
And
the
of
morning.
course the weather.
Yeah, well,
this
you got
time.
very lucky this time with the weather, certainly. The morning time in New York City is a special time. It's quiet. It's sort of cleanish before
Yeah.
the day takes over,
Right.
but you really get a different kind of flavor for the city,
Yeah.
for sure.
Right.
All right, so let's jump in. There's so much uncertainty right now in the world.
Mhm.
Post-pandemic, there's tons of challenges globally, geopolitically, the environmental and economic uncertainty, and this whole idea of this loneliness epidemic that we're hearing a lot about.
Yeah.
So there's clearly a need now for something different.
Mhm.
The whole system feels like it's on its head. So if you could talk to us about, your work and Leela Life and the role that Indic Wellbeing can play, particularly now.
All right. So let me actually start by talking about what's going on in the world and what might be a way to sort of approach it, right, for the human being. And then we'll come back to saying, can Indic Wellbeing support in that
perfect.
process, right? So I think what's going on today is just the intersection of huge waves of change.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of see them as sort of small little individual instances. There is this news thing about, somebody getting killed, or there's a war somewhere, or there is some all kinds of events that go on. And we kind of see them as, individual events. But really, from my perspective, they're just big waves of change going on, and they intersect. And so they all look like, it's all magnified. And so the problem, therefore, to solve for all of us, for each one of us, is really how do we handle change?
Mm-hmm.
It's not how do we handle the news, how do we handle change? So AI is coming in from one side, new ideologies, new ways of seeing the world, all of that is coming in. And we find ourselves kind of caught in the events that signify these big changes. And we don't really know how to sort of react to them in many ways, right? So the question is, how do we handle change? Sorry, you wanted to say something?
No, I was just going to say, so what it sounds like you're saying is that the change itself is secondary, and it's really more about how we're responding to the change. The change event almost doesn't matter.
Partly that, but partly also because change itself is, because there are such huge waves of change all coming together and fairly fast, the magnitude of the change is very significant. It's
Feels
not
significant.
It is very significant. So it's not as if change is not significant. But the way to handle that change does not come from the change itself.
Mm-hmm.
The only way we can navigate that change, handle that change, is ourselves.
Right.
Because you can't do anything about the change. The change is what it is, and there are big forces at work, and they some of them put into place years ago, happening and so on and so forth. You can't really, at an individual level, influence that. What you can influence is your reaction to it, right? And I think, therefore, that brings us squarely to the proposition of Indic well-being, because what Indic well-being talks about is changing your state of being. Right? So, and I want to take a minute to sort of say what is the difference between well-being, the way Indic knowledge thinks about it, versus the usual ideas about health and wellness and things like that, right?
Sure.
So let's
get
look at
into
that difference first. So the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about well-being is actually health, right? But whereas when you think about health and healthcare, we realize that what it's referring to is solving for certain kinds of problems, right? So the usual problems that healthcare solves are what? Illness and disease, right?
Yep.
So you have a problem, which means an illness or a disease. You get intervention for it, which could be a cardiology intervention or whatever, right? Any kind of medical intervention. It could be surgical, it could be pills, it could be whatever. And then if you are lucky, that problem goes away, which means that you overcome the illness, the disease goes away, right? So that's the proposition of healthcare.
Right.
Similarly, another word that we kind of use interchangeably with well-being is wellness, increasingly very popular today, right? So now wellness also is very similar to healthcare, which is that it's trying to solve a problem. So just like healthcare, wellness also has a problem, and then there is an intervention, and then, if things go well, you don't have that problem. The only difference is that the problem itself is different.
So what exactly is wellness?
So wellness is where you're solving for imbalances. So healthcare is where the problem is an illness and you're solving for it. Wellness is the problem is an imbalance and you're solving for it.
So give us an example of an imbalance.
So for example, the most often talked about imbalance, or the manifestation of imbalance, is the chronic inability to sleep.
I relate to that.
Yeah, many of us do. And really, it's not an illness, but it certainly is an outcome of some imbalance in your being. And if left unattended, will almost certainly take you to illness, right? So wellness is where you then address that imbalance. Another one, for example, could be chronic stress. Somebody is under stress all the time.
Relate to that too.
There you go. And so there again, it's about imbalance. There's something in our being that's not balanced, and that results in this problem called chronic stress. So you intervene for that in some manner, and there are lots of solutions that are being proposed in the market for that. And then hopefully, if some of that works for you, then you don't have that anymore, right? So in both cases, both healthcare and in wellness, paradigm is problem, intervention, solution, right? Well-being, especially in the Indic system, is different. It doesn't start from this problem or solving that problem. It doesn't start from there. It says what you want to do is to move to a new state of living where problems themselves occur far lesser. Opportunities come to you. So you don't have to be in this constant state of trying to solve, imbalances or illnesses. And you are in a different state, you are in a better state where all of this reduces, right? And the way to do that in the Indic system is that you want to live a life where you're totally aligned.
Can you talk a little bit more about what personal alignment means? I think I understand it's just being true to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people think that they are, but there's probably a deeper meaning to what that is.
Yeah, so I think absolutely right. I think being aligned and living a life of alignment simply means living a life as closely aligned to who you are. The challenge is, what does it mean when you say who you are? And that's one of the things I love about the Indic well-being knowledge, is that it doesn't leave it at that level of sort of, conceptual thinking. It goes very deep into practicalities. It allows you to figure out exactly what we are talking about. So what the Indic system says is that well-being is the path of aligning yourself to your innate qualities. So not just who you are, but what does it mean when you say who you are? We are all a bundle of certain specific innate qualities. And to live a life in which those innate qualities of ours actually get to flourish is alignment.
So if I understand the alignment and really the innate, what's true to who we are, maybe like a hard wiring of sorts.
Sure.
But if I enjoy something,
Right,
and the next person doesn't, is that connected to an innate quality in some way?
could be, need not be. So I think we need to understand the nature of qualities in us, right? So there is a difference between our qualities and our innate qualities. And the difference is this, we all have a bunch of qualities, right? And a lot of those qualities are actually acquired qualities, which we have acquired in the sort of passage of time of life, right? Some of it which you would have acquired in childhood, for example. We came back home from somewhere and a mother patted us on the head and said, well done. There was some message in that went in and started to create a quality in us.
Right.
And those are all learned qualities. Those are qualities that we acquired. And the important thing about acquired qualities is that you can also unacquire them. Essentially, you can they go away too. So, they're transient. You have some qualities which exist today and they go away. Innate qualities, on the other hand, you came to the world with, and they're always there with you. So sometimes we don't notice them because the other qualities are too big in our life. But the innate qualities are actually the underlying substrate of our qualities, really the thing that make us who we are.
Why is it so hard to stay true to who we are?
Because we don't know what our innate qualities are. It's as simple as that. Because in the day-to-day of life, we have come to believe that these are our true qualities. We are not able to distinguish between what are actually our innate qualities, which are so deep in us that they don't change, versus qualities that will come and they will go.
Is that something that should get taught at this academic level? Is it like, where would you get that along the way?
How do you find it yourself?
How do you find it? Yeah.
How do you find your innate qualities, or how do you acquire the other qualities? Is that...
No, I think the acquisition of other is a bit easier.
Right.
That seems to sort of take over.
Right.
But where would we get that? So I'm 60. I'm learning my innate qualities now. I feel like I have a lot of self-awareness. I've learned a lot about myself over the years, but I'm still learning about my innate qualities.
Right.
But how could I have gotten that when I was 15 or 20?
So I think, and that's a very good question. And so age generally becomes one way you find your own qualities, because you're just spending more time thinking about yourself and your life, and you've had more time to reflect on it. Some people find it, some people never find it.
Right.
That's just a degree of your self-awareness. But there are methods, and the Indic Wellbeing knowledge actually provides you specific methods to find. So you actually go through a structured process with a guide and with experts that then at the end of it enable you to know, here are the 3, 4, 5 qualities that dominate what are called my innate qualities. So that's very valuable knowledge, because then effectively you have got to know who you are.
Right.
And why is that useful? It is so useful because now you have a blueprint to react to the world. Because every time something happens, a new information comes along, a new circumstance happens, your reaction to the world can be aligned to those qualities that are innate to you. So it need not be off kilter. And so that's very powerful. So having an awareness of your innate qualities gives you a very good capability to navigate whatever happens in life.
So as we go into a little bit deeper about this Indic Wellbeing knowledge and Leela Life, can you just give us a quick snapshot of how you got here to be able to talk to us about this really deep knowledge?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. In a sense, it started from my awareness of this aspect started from my professional life. So background, I spent 15 years, first part of my life being a management consultant. And then another 15 years after that, sort of pretty much reaching where you can get to in management consulting and being successful in management consulting, completely shifted gears professionally and became an entrepreneur, an internet entrepreneur, one of the first in India and so on. Spent another 15 years doing that. So in both these things, all through this professional sort of journey, as I started getting into the world of what we would call success, I started to see a very interesting phenomenon. And that phenomenon was something I noticed in other successful people. And the phenomenon is this, that people got to success, the traditional success. So they made the money, they had, professional position, they had social standing, all of that. And then they would get to a place where they would say, I've got all this success, but I don't seem to have got something I thought success would give me. And they're not necessarily very articulate about what that something is. So somebody will say, I don't seem to be contented. I'm not as happy as I thought I would be. Somebody told me poetically that I have a hole in my heart. So, so these are all indicators of not getting something that they thought success would give them.
Well, it sounds like there's that when you talk a little bit earlier about this chase, like there's a corporate chase that you have to ascend to a certain degree. And then once you get there, like everything's supposed to be perfect.
Yeah.
And sounds like, and not so much.
Exactly. So, and this is interesting, right? Because we are trained from very early on to aim for that outcome, whatever that outcome is, right? And success is seen as this outcome. And we find it easy to measure it. We are expected to measure it and so on and so forth. So we get to that point, X million dollars, whatever, all of that stuff. And then you realize, there's something else that I haven't got. So when you get to that stage, you start to question the journey that you've been on. And that started to intrigue me. And it started to intrigue me primarily because I was relatively in the same place of success, but I didn't seem to feel that problem. I didn't seem to have that problem. So I wanted to sort of, so that kind of triggered a thought process in me saying, why is it that I don't seem to find the same hole in my heart, whereas a lot of people around me seem to feel that? And so that set me off on a journey. And the end of that journey is us sitting here in New York City talking about this, or at least the current stage of that journey is that.
Well, I think the journey's just beginning, it sounds like.
Yes, the journey never ends.
There's still a lot of work to be done to get to share this knowledge. So can you talk about your vision for Leela Life and to really harness this knowledge that you have for the betterment of society? And then we can maybe get into actually what it is in more detail.
Yeah, sure. So I think, as I said, this process of finding that there are a lot of people who are successful but have a hole in the heart is the problem that I've set out to solve. And as I've looked at it, and it's a unique and interesting problem, and I'll tell you why it's unique. Nobody is interested in solving anything for successful people. Why would you? Everybody is interested in solving lots of things for, the downtrodden and the people, the young people who are up and coming, and lots of people get support. But it's not often that you see people saying, successful people also need support. So it's not often that happens. It'll be about other things. We try to sell a more expensive car to them, but you're not really talking about support. And why is that important?
Yeah, why is that important?
It's very important. And the reason why it is important is because they occupy the decision-making structures of the world. So imagine a situation where the entire world is being run by what we call successful people, and all of them are walking around like zombies with holes in their heart. It's not a good place for the world to be.
It's a really great point, and I never thought about it like that because this notion has been a bit of a conundrum for me.
Yeah.
Because you think you've arrived, you have everything, you have status, you have the financial means to do whatever you want. And I think a lot of people think that therefore there is no need, there's no problem. But all you have to do is look at the political climate in the United States, and some particular, not to make this political, but there's something very off, and there's a lot of access.
Yeah, there is,
as an example.
Yeah, and across the world, as I travel around and talk to friends across the world, one thing that strikes me is that successful people have this big problem. They have a problem, but the bigger problem is that they don't have anybody to turn to for that problem.
It's almost like they're not allowed to acknowledge they have a
Correct.
problem.
It's almost that. And so, and the system it's almost saying, why do you have to worry about these guys have all the money and the whatever in the world? And it's as legitimate in my mind, a problem as any. But more importantly, for the world it's a problem that needs urgent attention because these are decision makers and, in a sense, people who control the levers of the world. So you don't want to sort of have them messed up.
Yeah. I think that is an incredibly relevant and very sort of powerful point that we don't hear anybody talking about.
Yeah.
There's a lot of external noise around and a lot of assumptions given. So the more we can get this message out there and the reason why that matters, it really connects.
In fact, let me also connect that to another point, which is that normally when people try to solve that, they say, if at all anybody tries to solve that, they will say, you shouldn't pursue so much of success or material success. So the solution, if at all it is ever mentioned, it is that you got too much money, or you tried to get too much money, or so essentially the pursuit of success itself is seen as a part of the problem. And therefore the reframing of the idea of success is what typically people talk about as the solution to this, right? Say, no, you should not be chasing so much.
Mm-hmm.
That certainly can be one way, but a deeper way, and I think that's what caught my attention from the Indic well-being system, that the Indic well-being system does not actually make any value judgment about that. It doesn't say that this has to be the thing or there should be less material or nothing. It doesn't say any of that. It's your choice. What it says is that in the pursuit of what you define as success, the more aligned you are as a human being in that path, the less you will have a hole in your heart as you go through that journey.
So what does the hole in the heart, how does that have a societal impact? I understand on a personal level, but on a societal level, can you just sort of elaborate on that a bit?
Sure,
because I think it's a really
No,
important
sure.
point.
So here's the point, right? So if I'm a decision maker, I run a company, I run a major institution in the government, I run a very critical lab, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm successful in the traditional sense of the term, but I don't have a sense, for example, of contentment. I don't have a sense of all that I'm doing being part of the wonderful process of just being alive. If I don't have that, I am unlikely to take decisions that have a value to both me and therefore to the world at large.
Right.
It's as simple as that. So your decisions come from a place of lack of enthusiasm, lack of, sort of enthusiasm about this wonderful gift of being alive. That's not there. And I think that's a big one. And that's because it is when people take decisions from that place that we get decisions that are good for society.
Makes a lot of sense. So it almost has, the more you take care of yourself and you have that alignment, it does have a ripple effect.
Huge.
So you can really lift up
Huge.
as opposed to do the opposite.
In fact, there is no such thing called a social intervention. There is only a human intervention. Social intervention is a consequence. What is social? What does social mean? Social means more than one person. That's all it means.
Right.
So you just have to get more than one person sorted, and their interactions will sort themselves out. The transactions of life then become, for everybody involved, transactions of life become easier. And when transactions of life become easier, society relaxes.
So why is it so hard?
Because we don't know who we are.
Which also seems that seems like crazy too on some level.
True. And I think, so it's interesting, right? So, if you were to look at, let's say, animals, those people, those of us who have pets will notice this, right? That pets don't have existential questions about who they are. They are, right? Right? And the reason for that is because they don't go through all those formal retraining of how we think about ourselves. They are just who they are.
So they're not really influenced externally.
They are far less influenced externally. It's a consequence of, it's not a bad thing. It's a consequence of, the powerful place that human beings have gotten to, right? In evolution terms, we are able to make decisions for ourselves, and we have a long period of childhood where we learn a lot of things and so on and so forth. So this is an outcome of all of that. But one of the outcomes of all of that is that we get so focused on the acquisition of things around us in terms of knowledge and therefore of qualities and all that, that we forget or lose sight of who we truly are. And one of the ways to see this is to look at children.
Yeah, they're so innocent.
And we use different words for that. But, everybody says, I wish I could recreate the childhood wonder, And it's a very interesting thing. What is it that we are talking about? And that when you explore, you will understand what is it that you need to find about yourself.
Go a little bit further with that.
So, children, so let's talk about children, right? So everything they do is intense, right, in the day, right? So they have all kinds of stuff going on in their life. They're happy, they're sad, they've got an ice cream, they're incredible, they're playing with the pet, and then suddenly, there's something bad happening, and there's just, it's like that, that Norman Rockwell painting of the life of a day in the life of a boy and a day in the life of a girl, which if you just look at that painting, it's just so full of emotion. But one of the things we miss when we see all that emotion is that independent of what emotion they're going through, both the boy and the girl are fully engaged with life. So they're able to engage with life intensely and with the same degree of engagement, independent of what emotion they're going through or the circumstance that they're going through at that time. And that capability comes from alignment.
But yet they don't know that they have
They don't know that because they haven't acquired anything else. So they are fundamentally aligned to their innate state because they haven't got a lot of acquired stuff.
At what age do you think that sort of shifts?
I think schooling is a big place. Even it can happen before that. But if you just look at how we all go through our schooling, formal schooling is a big place, right? A lot of learned behaviors and acquired qualities from that point. Then, of course, we get into the work world, where again, there's a lot of qualities. We initially start by actually, very often we go to a place of work and then we put on a sort of role, right? There's a robe that we put on and say, okay, this is me. And then slowly that becomes qualities.
Yeah.
And then we don't even know that it's a thing. It's just qualities, right?
So we've talked a lot about qualities and alignments. So let's really how do we find out about this? What is the framework, the Leela Life framework? Take us through how that, we get how it came about, but how would one find out their innate qualities?
So there's a process for that. So like you said, there are two ways of doing this. One is to examine yourself for 15 years. And, if you're lucky and if you're self-aware, you will get there. The other is to follow a structured process. And the Indic system actually gives you a structured process to follow. So what we do is there are three parts to it. The first part is figure out what your innate qualities are, and I'll get into some detail of how we do that. The second is look at the actual circumstances of your life today and figure out which of these qualities my life actually does not allow me to flourish. And it happens that we find that there are some of those qualities are actually suppressed by the sheer, the day-to-day of our lives. That is the second point. And once you know that, these are the qualities that are not getting to flourish or are suppressed, you then figure out what can I do about that. And there are one of two things you can do about that. One is you can change the circumstance of your life, that particular circumstance or a set of circumstances. Easier said than done because we've all got to a circumstance through one long journey. And very determined people do change them, and sometimes it takes some time. But there are circumstances where we say, I can't change that circumstance of life, or I don't want to change the circumstance of life. In which case, the other option that you have is, okay, I now know that this quality of mine is not flourishing because of this particular circumstance, but I need to flourish this quality if I have to be aligned. So can I do something else to enable this particular quality to flourish? It might not be by changing the circumstance, but something else. And so that's the path that we need to get to eventually, to find the series of things that we have to bring into our daily life that will enable those qualities that are suppressed to flourish. That's pretty much it. That's what you have to do. So 3 steps. Find out our innate qualities, map it to the circumstances of our life and find where they are not flourishing, figure out what is the program that emerges from that, so that what are the other things that we have to bring into our lifestyle, into our daily life, that can help those qualities flourish.
And that's the foundation of Leela Life?
That is the foundation. That's what we provide.
Mm-hmm.
And so once we help you identify this, that's part 1. We will also help you go on the journey of doing those things that you can actually do. So part 1 is to figure out, it's like that famous Alice in Wonderland thing, right? So Alice gets to this fork in the road, and Alice looks up and says, there's a Cheshire cat sitting up on the tree. So Alice doesn't know, should I go this way? Should I go this way? Ask the cat, should I go this way? Or should I go this way? And the answer, in my mind, one of the most seminal answers to solving most of life's problems, the cat says, depends on where you want to get to.
Right.
Where you want to get to. And that's wonderful, because that's exactly the point here. So if you know that these are the qualities that are not flourishing, and that my purpose now in well-being is to flourish that qualities, you've reduced this huge unknown problem to a very controllable, handleable, addressable path.
Right. And you can get rid of all the extraneous noise and the FOMO and the chase. It seems like it would just really simplify and almost minimize the choice.
Correct. And so you now know what your path of well-being is, and it's not a complicated path. It's a very simple path. A few qualities that you have to flourish, and a few things that you have to bring into your life so that those qualities don't get suppressed. That's it. So what does that mean? It means, in addition to everything else, like you're saying, it means that all of the things that happen in life, you can almost ignore most of them, because they really don't have that much of an importance in your life, because you know what will make you truly take you to a place of well-being and alignment.
Right.
So that knowledge is what is important. And this is the cornerstone of Indic well-being knowledge, because the knowledge, actually, the Indic system actually says that the only reason we are not in that place of the state of well-being is because of, it's a Sanskrit word, and it says avidya. Vidya means knowledge, and avidya means lack of knowledge. And so simply that knowledge of what your innate qualities are and how they are not flourishing is the missing piece in knowing how to get to well-being. It's as simple as that. So that's the true essential knowledge you need, and that's what Leela Life gives you, but doesn't stop there, but also then takes you further to then connect you to the true experts and the specialists of that various pieces of that, the knowledge that you need to bring into your life, and takes you on the journey, on a guided journey with all of them, if you so choose to have that. So one is laying out the path for you or the blueprint for you. That's part 1. And part 2 is helping you actually go on that journey.
I mean, the simplicity of it is very appealing, and I'm sure would appeal to many people. So how do we make this available? How do we get the access out there for as many people as possible?
So there are 2 ways. I think one is, of course, how do we structure things such that this knowledge is easily accessible, right? So the method we have chosen is a model which is digital plus physical, right? So a hybrid model. So for example, there are lots of specialists with various different types of knowledge sitting in India. Many of those pieces of knowledge might be relevant in crafting the program for you so that your those particular qualities are flourished. Now, you might not normally get access to them because A, you don't know who they are, and B, once you do know them, they're sitting in some corner in India. Right. So you're not going to, effectively you can't get access. So what we've done is we've found out who those people are. And I can tell you that's a huge, huge effort, because India is a large country and there are lots of corners. And a lot of these people are not in the big cities of India, but they are in small places doing their own thing. Many generations of practitioners, long lineages and so on and so forth. So we've done a lot of work over the last few years in actually finding these people. So that is one. The other is then, having found them, how can we make them accessible to people, let's say in New York City, right? And so what we've done is to use technology. So let's bring digital to bear for people here in New York City. So you actually can do one-on-one interactions with these people as part of the program. And these people sit in India, you sit here. There are some challenges around, time zones and things
Right,
like
of
that. I
course.
mean, all of that. But then we work very hard to sort of solve that for you. But the most important thing is that a lot of this knowledge sits in India and is based on a very old 5,000-year, world. And you live in this modern world. So in between sits Leela Life to make sure that that translation, is easy. So as the bridge between this very old, very powerful knowledge and the reality of your life today. So that's a big part of how we make it happen, which is the finding of those people and making them accessible to you through an online process. I must also tell you one thing. A lot of these specialists, they're not that enthused by the idea that, you wake up in the morning and now we will start to help people in New York City. No, many of them are, true to their knowledge. And they know the power of that knowledge, and they're just sitting there. They don't do any marketing. They're not this thing. There's so many people coming to them that it's a lot of effort for us to convince them that a portion of their time we should spend in actually helping people in the exact other end of the globe.
Is it mostly just local people that are taking advantage of the folks in India for the most
It would
part?
it would be mostly local, but there would be now increasingly a lot of people from across the world. I'll tell you an example. Very close to where I live, maybe 150 kilometers from where I live, is a person who specializes in the health of the eye. Okay. And recently, there was a head of state, president of one of the large African countries, whose daughter had gone blind when she was a teenager. And 10 or 15 years later, he brought her to that particular place. She spent 3 months there, and she's gone back with about 70 to 80% of her eyesight recovered.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So the world is starting to, go out and find the knowledge and say, because for very difficult kind of circumstances, when everything else around them has given up and said can't be done, they come looking, and sometimes they're able to find. So the beauty of this is that that's slowly starting to happen, but we've been able to actually curate all of those people from across India and look for them proactively and convince them, to do this online thing and be available and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that's the effort that Leela Life has done. In addition to the fact that we also have developed this framework and the structure that where you can find out what your own qualities are, which are not flourishing, and therefore develop a blueprint of well-being for you. So now you have a strategy of your well-being, which is entirely built by Leela Life working with experts. And then we have all of these people sitting back in India. And so we combine the two together to make it work for you.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, I think it also speaks to how broken things are here, certainly in Western society. So can you talk about this trend of holistic well-being? And there's a huge shift. And if people are traveling to India to get care, that's a pretty significant statement and reflection of the state of affairs of our own society and our own systems that are they're falling apart, they're breaking.
Yeah, and I can tell you, it's not just Western society, it's modern society. So
Society,
even if you go to India and if you go to the big cities of India, it's exactly the same as you see in New York City. And what's the problem? The problem is all of modern knowledge is built on one core method.
Making money?
Making money is, of course, a wonderful outcome of it, but there's a particular method to it. You know what the method is? The technical term for it is deconstruction. Basically breaking down things into its individual parts. There is all our science, all our medical science, everything is about saying what? It doesn't start with the human being. It starts with the illness. It starts with the organ. It goes down into, let's break down the human being into subsystems. Digestive system, the lung and the breath related system, and so on and so forth. And then get down into each little, each organ. And then from within that to each part of the organ, and so on and so forth. So you're really looking at breaking down things, deconstruction. It's called the Cartesian method in all of science. It's a wonderful thing. because it enables you to go deep and figure out what's going on. But one of the challenges of the Cartesian system when it comes to the human being is that nothing in the human being is independent of other things. So something that's happening at the sole of your foot has an impact on various other parts of your body and organs internally. Now, if you only treat for the sole of your foot, you don't see what's going on. And therefore, everything to do with the human being is deeply connected to everything else, internally as well as externally, right? And therefore, the human being's change of state can only be achieved if you see the human being holistically and not human being as a sum of parts. You cannot see the human being as two hands and only two legs or 2 feet, whatever, right? So you got to see the human being holistically. You cannot even see the human being as simply saying physical, mental, spiritual, because there is no such thing called purely mental. There are, if you're dealing with a mental proposition, it is obvious that there will be some physical aspects to it and some spiritual aspects to it, and everything is all mixed up, right? So this problem of everything being seen as silos and everything being addressed as silos has led us to a place where nobody is saying the whole thing, which is the human being. And I can tell you, there's another very interesting thing. So healthcare has gone down that path, unfortunately. Healthcare industry, we know this, right? It's broken, we know it. And one of the reasons is, and I've had a lot of conversations with very, very intelligent doctors. And one common thing that I'm able to see is the problem that the medical system has is that it sees you as a patient.
Not as a human.
Not as a human being. It just cannot see you as a human being. It is not geared to seeing it as a human being. From the time of the Hippocratic Oath, it's not able to see you as a human being. It sees you as a group of organs
to be fixed.
And a set of illnesses, right? And nothing wrong with that. But in the absence of that overall view, it skews everything. And I think that's the point. So there is a challenge there. Now, one of the challenges in the new and emerging wellness industry is that the wellness industry was designed to, the great hope was that would solve this problem. But unfortunately, what has happened is the wellness industry has reached the exact same place. So now it's trying to solve the sleep problem. It's trying to solve the stress problem. And you can't solve the sleep problem with a new mattress. Yeah, it certainly helps.
The advertisers are not going to be very happy about this.
But there you go. So that's the issue, right? So therefore, if you don't get good sleep, there are many ways you can solve it. But thinking about sleep is probably not one of them.
Right.
Right. If you think a lot about sleep, you're not going to get sleep. So there's a whole. So basically, everything has to be holistic. And so the Indic well-being proposition has both parts, holistic and well-being. Well-being means I'm not going to chase this constant thing of trying to solve problems, but I'm going to get you to a different state. The state itself takes care of the fact that you don't have too many problems and so on. So your focus is a state, not solving of X problem and Y problem and Z problem, right? So that's first. The second is, in the transition to that new state, I'm going to see you as a holistic being and a part of the much larger whole called the environment, and not as a bunch of organs and a bunch of illnesses or whatever, right? So I think that is the approach that has been developed by the Indic system over many thousands of years.
It's fascinating, and again, something that more people need to hear you speak about it, because it really addresses so many of the challenges that we have today.
Right.
And it is simple in what you're saying. I don't think it's getting there is so simple. So how do we get people in this sort of journey? Tell us about what your approach is. How does Leela Life make it available?
Right. So I think that framing is exactly right. Make it available. So the way we look at it is that, it's not a blue colored capsule or or something else, a thing that you can easily have and
quick fix. No quick fix.
It's not a quick fix. It's not an instant cure. We know that this will take some time. And so the starting point is we must make sure that people understand the approach and the proposition. What is well-being and what does it mean to go after holistic well-being or to change your state? What does that mean? And the problem with that is that it can't be done in 4 snappy sentences or a bumper sticker. It just can't be done. And so you got to have at least a certain number of people in the world who understand what this means, right? So the emphasis for us is that in the next year or so, we want to make sure that in at least a few of the major cities of the world, we have a few people who have heard me go through all this, just like we're having this conversation, and have understood what all this kind of means, and have started to go on a journey with Leela Life. I think so. What we are trying to build is the sort of that core group of sort of enthusiasts who have understood the power of this and have started to transform their life with that. Because once we have that core group of people in positions of relevance and decision making, once we have that, then their stories will do the talking.
So that therefore starting at the top is where we were
starting
talking
at the
about
top,
that earlier.
starting at the top, and starting with the few,
right?
And spending a lot of time with them and giving it the time. So it's not a I can't do this with an ad in the subway or whatever, right? You can't do that.
Right.
And not even a Super Bowl ad which says, reaches some million people. No, it doesn't help. What you want to get to is a few people who have got success and who have the self-awareness to recognize that they got success but haven't got something. So you want to find a few of those people, let's say in New York City, and make this available to them and help them go on this journey. And as they start to unpack the power of that, celebrate their stories with everybody else.
And then the movement is
and then the movement it just unfolds, right? So it's simple. It's just the stories of all those people will be the testimonial to the power of the thing, because beyond that there's no point in spending time sort of propagating the knowledge itself. The propagating the success of its application will happen hopefully by itself.
Right. So I know something that we launched in April as part of the Leela Life sort of to manifest the mission on some level is the introduction of a salon.
Right.
And part of what you're talking about is getting this knowledge out there. And what I love about what you're doing is that you're really approaching this in a very tangible, person-to-person, relational way. And that's where the salon comes into play. So can you talk about these salons and what are they?
Sure. And you know them better than anything else because,
I know them,
but of course, because we started the first salon together. I remember this, sitting down, I think in the, in downtown in Lower Manhattan and having a cup of coffee together on a winter day and talking about, and asking you, would you like to bring a bunch of your friends together and, hear me really talk about this? And you said, yeah, let's try that out. And in a sense, that's how we started with salons in April, as you remember, right? It's been a very, very interesting journey since then. And now we are doing so many salons every time I am here, right? And I think for the next trip, we're planning 10 salons. And I think we're talking about at least 100 to 150 people.
Yep.
Extraordinary. But the more important thing for me beyond those numbers are the response we're getting to our salons, right? Just the knowledge that we're able to pass on. And for me, the most interesting thing about the salon is because they're very small groups, right? 10 people, 12 people, 8 people. And very casual setting, we completely encourage any amount of questioning, ideas, thoughts, comments. So it turns from after the initial communication of what the knowledge is, then it turns into a very, very engaging discussion of saying, how does this work for me? And let me try to really understand this. And I think that is really what I love about salons, because, the examples that they come up with their life and the context then come out, and we're able to then react to that and say, for that, this is how it helps, and this is how you should think about it, and so on and so forth. So I think we've made tremendous progress, I think, with salons. And for people who want to understand what Indic Wellbeing knowledge can do for them, there is no better place to start than the salons. In fact, I've come to almost to the place where I say that, you know what, if you really want to do anything with Leela Life in terms of the actual doing of it, come for a salon, understand it, feel comfortable, feel excited, and then go down that journey, because it'll change the quality of your intention on the journey. You will not have this, one of the things that the Indic system says is very interesting, is that if you go on any journey, any initiative, go down any path, if you have a degree of skepticism about that, it reduces the quality of the outcome. So Indic well-being kind of encourages you to get to a place of enthusiasm about it. And then once you get to a degree of enthusiasm about it, surrender yourself to that completely. Go fully into it. Don't then be half-hearted about it. And one of the benefits of doing a salon is that it's open to everybody, whoever is interested, is that you can actually come to that place before you do the thing with Leela Life. Otherwise, you'll get into it and say, I'm doing this, but, no, go through this before and get to a place where you feel comfortable that the knowledge has something to offer me. There are many unknowns, but that'll always be the case. But at least once you are aware that this is likely to offer me what I'm looking for, surrender to it and let it take you on that path.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a really smart approach, and it creates a unity at the same time, because we're saying, in order for you to move forward, we want you to be like an educated consumer. We want you to have the knowledge. We want you to be comfortable with the knowledge. And the best way to get that is spending time with you, spending time with other people who are in a similar place, having a conversation, and then just starts to sort of integrate within, and then you can decide how you want to move forward.
Correct. And it's quite possible that you'll say, I'm not ready for this now, but what I've heard is incredibly valuable. So let me ruminate on that for like 6 months, and then I'll decide what I want to do. Perfectly all right. Because for me, the bigger point is that the knowledge has to come out. And it's got to percolate. And everybody who hears that, see, one of the good things that we've heard from our salons is that everybody has said that, I know I've gone out of these very different as a person from when I walked in. In that 2 hours, right? So, and to me, that's the greatest satisfaction, because the satisfaction is not that the knowledge is valuable. I know that knowledge is valuable. The satisfaction is knowing that I was able to translate it in a manner that it works for today's New York audiences. That gives me a lot of satisfaction, because I know the power of that. I know but the problem is it sits in a context which is very different from the modernity of, let's say, today's New York City. And so being able to do that as a person and as a brand is very, very satisfying. And so that's something that I think salons do very well.
Yeah, and it's very powerful. And I've been in all of the salons with you, and you do an incredible job really taking that ancient knowledge and making the connection to modern times and the challenges that we all face. And I think it's so relatable for everybody who hears you. It's incredible to watch you and hear you. And every salon I'm in, I'm still getting more out of it. So it's great that people go through one. It would be great if they went through more than one, but obviously that's not realistic. But what would be the next step, if you could just explain the journey after that first entry point of the salon, then what?
So there are two states, right? One is I want to move forward with Leela Life versus I want to get some time to figure this out for myself, right? So there are two paths. So let's go into the first path, which is I want to do something with Leela Life. So you move in and then say, okay, for step one of that is actually to get a little bit more knowledge and end with the place where you get to know your innate qualities. So that's a product offering which we call Compass, which is really a 3-session offering where 2 sessions you work with me and I pass on some information and we have discussions and so on and so forth. So you deepen your understanding of what is Indic Wellbeing and actually deepen your understanding of the framework that we're going to use for you to actually go into doing various things that you will bring into your life. So all that we have only talked about at a very superficial level in the salons. We'll go into more detail in the Compass. And then you end with a session, which is actually a workshop, where you will work with our guide, Carolyn, who's amazing at this.
She's amazing.
She's very, very good at this, and who will then help you draw out, what your innate qualities are.
So you actually, in that 3rd session of that series, you leave with your innate qualities.
You do a lot of things. You give information. You do a lot of things to be able to find out your innate qualities. And 3 or 4 days later, you will get an actual document which says
follow-up from that session.
Which is will be the follow-up from that session. So it's a cohort. It's a group of people. And it's a wonderful experience because it's more than just you doing it by yourself. It's a group of people all sort of united in wanting to know a lot more about the path of Indic well-being. People who have come in through salons. And secondly, you also have this experience of, passing on the information about yourself along with a lot of other people. Of course, you're doing that on your own screen, and on it's a questionnaire that you fill up. So that, of course, remains private and only you see it. But the experience of participating in that is joint, and you can.
Can you join this work? Can you engage in Compass if you don't go to the salon, or it's preferable? That's the step is salon, Compass, and then you're going to talk about the blueprints.
Correct. So I think the ideal is salon, Compass, and the blueprint, because there's a logic to that method, right? A method has a logic, and the logic is first get introduced to the knowledge from effectively from the source, so to speak, because I've put together a lot of the framework and so on. Then from there move to Compass, where I will deepen your knowledge, and then bring in the guide who can then start to convert that into a practical, real, immediate, personalized thing for you, which is Carolyn. So that is Compass. And once you've kind of gone through Compass, you then move on to what we call the blueprint, which is really to translate just the knowledge of your innate qualities to a blueprint for the path you have to take for your personal well-being. So what is the additional things that blueprint has is it takes off from the place of knowing your innate qualities and then maps it to the actual circumstances of your life. So you go through a conversation for an hour with Carolyn or one of the other guides that she's trained up. And that will help you understand, okay, which of these qualities of mine actually getting suppressed because of these particular circumstances of my life. Not easy to do. It's not something that is easy to do only by yourself.
Right.
It's actually a very useful thing to do it in conjunction with somebody who's trained to help you find that out. Of course, you have to know your innate qualities first, and that we would have already done in Compass. So you get to that. And once you know that, then we take it back to our experts. And from there, it will emerge what is called a program, a Leela Life program.
Yep.
And what the program will tell you is that to flourish the 2 or 3 qualities that you are having a challenge with, which are misaligned, this is the group of things that we want you to bring into your life. So things mean what? What are these things that I'm talking about which will come into your life? It could be a practice, a new practice that we will suggest. You saw yesterday in an event that we did, one of the practices that we showcased to people, incredible actually, the experience was awesome. Even for somebody who's lived that practice throughout his life, I can tell you when I saw that and how it was being explained and by our specialist and how it was being received by all the people, it was an incredible moment for me, because till then it was a personal thing. I would do it. I know it's great, it's value, but you don't think a lot about it.
And
right?
maybe do you even appreciate the value of what
you
it
don't,
has been over
exactly, because I was
part of your life.
Exactly. I was born into it, whatever, right? So this was the practice of self-massage. And it's a highly technical thing, but very simple to practice once you know it. It's like a lot of things. It's about the knowledge. Once you have the key, the knowledge is there, it suddenly becomes incredibly valuable and easy to do. So practices like that. So it could be a practice. Or it could be what we call an insight, which is just some knowledge that you get, which reframes the way you look at life. Very important, because how we look at life has a tremendous impact on how we engage with life. So a big part of our ability to flourish our qualities is also by changing a little bit about some of the deep-rooted assumptions with which we operate. We don't even know those are assumptions. And so bringing some of those insights into our life is also important. So we will help you hone down this particular aspect is what you should focus on. So yesterday, again, in the same event that we did yesterday, we honed in on the insight called detachment, which the word itself people find very difficult to say, how can I be detached from the world? But we understood yesterday how it is different from, it was very powerful. And the idea that you must not fear, you must be fully engaged in the activity and the pursuit of what you're doing, whatever that is, without fearing and constantly thinking about the outcomes. Is really, I'm obviously trying to paraphrase. There's a lot
more to it than that.
There's a lot more to it than that, and there's great power in that and so on. It's a central tenet in the Indic knowledge. So it could be insights like that, or it could be products. There are wonderful natural supplements of all kinds coming from oils to herbs to so on and so forth, which all have a tremendous place in specific aspects. So bringing those. Or it could be retreats. where we know that there are certain kinds of retreats which are geared for certain aspects. So we will help you craft a program which will be over a few months, which will help you actually get to a place where those qualities start to flourish. As I said, it's not a magic bullet. It's not an instant cure. It is a combination. The power lies in the combination. The power lies in your intention, and the power lies in the fact that you will do it for some time. You won't do it for 3 days and give up.
Right.
And we will help you go on that journey, because the guide, and Caroline is she's wonderful in the sense that she's very soft, but she's very, she will hold you accountable.
Yeah, she's very steadfast in the mission, making sure that you're going to stick
and
with
your
it.
journey is important to her. And it's not, it's nothing other than the fact that there's a joy that we all truly get by watching, us being able to help you go on that journey. And so I think she's a great embodiment of that feeling and that intention. So yeah, that's what we do.
So it could be a little overwhelming. There's a lot here, right? When you think about just the little bit that you mentioned, there's products, there's experiences, there's insights, there's practices, there's retreats. I know there's a very specific methodology that you've created.
Right.
So can you spend a few minutes on the 5x5?
Yeah. So first of all, when I say all of this, you will not in your program necessarily get all of them. It could be 2 or 3 of those. It could be a practice, one product, and maybe one retreat. That's it. So it's not as if, you necessarily get, and this is the beauty of it, because we will work with you to figure out what is the powerful combination that will work for you. It's not about more. It's not about giving you 10 things to do. It's about figuring out the combination, the right combination that will give you the best outcome. I mean, that's our focus, right? The combination is our focus. So that's the first thing that we need to understand. So don't get terribly hassle that you'll have to do 25 things. It won't happen.
Right.
But the other thing is, okay, so we'll also talk a little bit about the framework. When I said practices, products, insights, and experiences, these come from, what are they about? Is it yoga? Is it meditation? Is it what? I mean, that's often a question it comes from potentially one of 5 areas or a combination of some of those areas. One is eating right. The second is think calm. The third is rejoice in art. Bring art into your life. The fourth, live on land. It's not as you don't have to go live on land, you are living on land, but bring nature into your life. And the fifth, in the framework, we call it smile. But what we really are referring to are 3 things in that. One is personal care and fitness, intimacy, and spirituality. So it's really this set of things from which we will pick practices, products, and experiences for you. So you don't have to do all of them. But there's a particular method in which we will say which of this works for you, given the qualities that you have, and given the circumstances of your life, and where the qualities are misaligned. We will arrive at a specific combination from within all of this, of one practice, maybe one insight. It could change a little bit here and there depending on each individual. It's highly, highly hyper-personalized, and give that to you. And then that becomes your blueprint of journey. Now you know that for me to go on my path of well-being, all I need to do is focus on these few things. Amazing. And bring them into your life. And so, the other interesting thing that this does is that it stops the chase of, today what happens in wellness and well-being and all that is every 3 weeks there's a new thing. There's a new diet. There's Peloton, and there is ultra marathon running, and there is all kinds of stuff, right? Every day. So how do you, it's crazy. You'll go crazy trying to get your head around all of this stuff. You don't have to worry about all of that. Now you've got your blueprint. You're on the path. Nothing stops you from, exploring something else if you just, feel, okay, let me, just for fun, let me explore it. But you don't need to. So it gives you that tremendous capacity to focus your efforts in something that will produce, you will get to, like Alice in Wonderland, you will actually get to the place that you want to get to instead of being all over the place.
But how do you, there's so much out there, as you say, right? The new shiny object. all these biohacks. I mean, the biohack space is just incredible.
Yeah.
There's medical spas popping up all over the place. And I understand what you're saying. Like, you align to your innate nature, so you don't have to chase all these things. But there is progress and evolution and science that evolves and all sorts of things that that allow the kinds of remedies that we have now. That's certainly medically.
Right.
How do you balance all of that?
That's a very good question. And the simple answer to that is you have to see two parallel strands. All of those things, from biohacks to all these new shiny objects, you will find 99% of them are designed to solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
Here is the problem it solves. It'll solve for sleep, it'll solve for nutrition, it's designed to solve problems. Well-being as a journey is not designed to solve problems. So while every biohack is designed to solve a particular problem.
Or elevate and enhance and magnify.
For what? Some purpose.
Right.
For some purpose. Right? For some purpose. It's not independent of that purpose. It could be longevity, it could be whatever. It's trying to solve, I died too early. I want to solve that. That's what I'm just paraphrasing what is the longevity problem, right? Longevity problem is nothing but, hey, I don't want to die.
Right.
Pretty much. At least not now.
Not yet.
Yeah, that's right. So,
they haven't solved for.
They haven't solved for. And, what they have solved for is, it's interesting actually. Somebody said the other day that what medical science has been able to solve with is not longer life, but longer death. Which is very true. So essentially what medical science has been able to do is elongate the last few years of your life, not in a great way, but certainly in a way that you live longer.
Right.
Or at least, medically live longer.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's on longevity and it's a whole other thing and it's gone there. So all those things you can bring into your life in the context of solving for specific problems that you're chasing on a daily basis. But while you're doing all that, it's very important to understand that if you don't change your state, this stuff will only become more and more as time goes by.
Then it becomes acquisition of sorts.
You will just become, because you'll be so caught up in this problem and I'm solving this problem and then I'm solving calcium for this thing and that problem, and everything becomes articulated in the context of problems that you're solving. I'm not saying there aren't problems in life, but the point is if you change your state, the number of problems you need to solve suddenly dramatically reduces. So if you are in the process of changing your state, and that's what you should be focused on, you just need to focus on a few things.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is to figure out what those few things are in relation to you is the challenge. And that's what we're able to give you. And once you're on that path, you can continue to solve for specific problems, but you will actually find as you go forward that your obsession with problems will come down, because problems themselves will come down, because you're gradually moving on that state. And when that happens, you will actually truly find a different kind of freedom. And it's very powerful.
It's amazing. I can't wait to see the benefit of all of the knowledge, because I know you put a lot of time into the salons, and the journey that you've been on is incredible, and it really resonates. There's so many devices out there. My son has a Whoop band. Now he wants an Oura ring. There's the watch. He already started with the Apple Watch. There's just a ton of devices out there.
Right.
Can you talk about the role that these devices, these trackers play in modern society in relation to this Indic well-being approach?
Right.
Because it's a whole thing.
I know. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, when you think about these devices, what you have to really go behind is, what do these devices try to do? What do they really help you with? And what they really help you with is measurement.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The whole logic of all these devices is measurement. So why is measurement important? Right? Measurement is important in the modern system because our entire view of reality is that it is externally focused. So we measure something and then we get an intervention from outside based on that measurement. So now the measurement is also external. So there's a device that measures you. You don't know what's happening to you, but a device knows what's happening to you. So take the case of the Apple Watch, which helps you, let's say, for example, the app that lets you calculate the number of steps that you walked.
Mm-hmm.
What is it trying to do? let's go behind this, right? What is it trying to do? The proposition is that every human being should be active. That's the proposition, right?
Yep.
From there, it says, okay, to be active, you need to walk, let's say. It's one way to be active. You can do a lot of housework and be active. So it's not necessary that only, and there is enough body of evidence that suggests that housework is actually among the best ways to be active, because it's just the range of body movements required in that is actually higher than almost anything else, right? Or hunting or whatever, many other things. So the proposition is that we have to be active. Now the point is, for us to know whether we are active or not, we now need a device to tell us whether we are active or not. That's the proposition of why that app works, right? So you don't know whether, have I been active enough for today? Now the moment you give away to an external device the ability to answer that question, you fundamentally degrade yourself as a human being, because now you don't know whether you're active. Now, what do you know? Effectively, that becomes the question. What exactly do you know about yourself?
If you don't, a number.
Yeah, I mean, forget about, that's a different issue. I'm saying it's a number, but I'm saying the moment you say, I don't know whether I'm active, my watch knows whether I'm active, then effectively, what do you know about yourself if you don't even know whether you're active or not?
So does that take you away from alignment?
That takes you away from awareness.
Yeah,
it takes you away from the basic awareness. What is our awareness? If you don't know whether you've been active for today, it just takes you away from awareness. The fundamental awareness of a human being, whether I am active or not. I mean, think about it. Just think about it objectively, right? Mm-hmm. It's just idiocy at a high level. It doesn't seem like that, because we've kind of gradually got used to the idea of measurement, and then from there it came to this. And so everybody is now, I keep saying this, right? So the next step you take, which brings me to the other point, which is that now you don't have the capacity to know yourself, because even something as simple as, am I active? Because now you're waiting for your watch to tell you that. The second is, if you count the number of steps that you take, you will never take a step. What that means is that when we take a step, when we walk, there's an experience that we go through. We don't even recognize the experience, but there is an experience that we go through. You know, our feet are, this thing, and I'm on a carpet. I know the difference. I don't have shoes on, and I'm barefoot, and I'm walking, and this thing, and muscles are dancing, and there's temperature, and there's sensation, and there's lots happening.
We don't really think about that.
We can't think, because now we are in, I am now on my 942nd step. So we have taken all of that rich experience and thrown it out of the window and taken only an intellectual thing called a number out of that. Imagine the loss. Imagine the sheer losses as a human being if all of the various experiences that lead to your being active, you lose the experience itself, and it simply becomes a number in your head.
So are you saying that these devices we should just get rid of them?
We should find a way, and this is an interesting question. If you just get rid of them tomorrow, you'll just get into a bigger trouble. And let me take another example. This is the example I often quote of the notifications that we get on our phone, right? Let me take that example. We all get lots of notifications often, right, on the phone. And why do we have so many apps set up for notifications? Why do you think we have so many apps set up for notifications?
We always have to be in the know.
Correct. Exactly. We don't know what is it that we don't want to know. Correct? We don't know what is it that we don't want to know. And because we don't know that, we are not sure. Maybe I need to know this.
So much pressure.
Maybe I want to know this, right? Who knows? And why do we have that feeling? Because we have not the faintest clue who we are, what is going on with ourselves. If you knew this is me, then you would have a very clear sense of priority, saying, you know what, this is what I want to know, and I don't want to know any of this.
And not feel bad about it.
Not feel bad. It's not even a question of feeling good or feeling bad. You will just know it.
But there's a sense of I would be I'm not in the know, or there's a sense of inadequacy.
That comes because you don't know yourself. I'm saying that emotion of feeling that you're talking about will vanish when you know yourself well enough, and then you say, none of this matters to me. That feeling goes away. So this thing what you just said, saying without feeling bad, that without feeling bad goes away not because you don't have these things, but because once you know yourself, you're taken, it's done. It's done. And so that is the point. So once you are in a path of alignment, you will increasingly find that you will do two things. One, you will start to hear yourself better. So you will go back to knowing whether you are active without a watch. I guarantee you this will happen. It's as simple as that. You will, because you can hear yourself. And the second is, you will start to experience it fully. Which is related to the first point, because it's when you experience it that you're able to know it. And so both happen. And so the answer to that is not throwing away the watch on day one, but the answer is to go on a journey that aligns you, and you will realize that you, on a particular day that you forgot to wear the watch, you will not miss it. That's how you will, and then slowly over time, that'll be one day, and then it'll be 2 days, and then it'll be a week, and then it'll be a fortnight. And that's when you won't even realize it.
Right.
You will slip into a thing where it'll become easy. You don't need to. And that's the point about all of this, right? It's not about having to make these decisions. It'll just happen by itself.
So it's really just one, knowing yourself.
Yeah.
Trusting yourself, and that you are the authority on you, not all this external stuff.
Yeah. Knowing yourself, and then making sure that those aspects that are not where they should be in your life, you are doing something about it. But it's only when the flourishing of those qualities happen, the knowing alone will not solve this. The flourishing of these qualities is important for you to get to the place where you don't need all this. Because then you become aligned. Knowing does not align you. Knowing only tells you where you're not aligned. Then you have to go do the journey of coming to that alignment. And once you start coming to that alignment, I'm telling you, these things just become reasonably irrelevant.
It sounds beautiful and simple and where we should be.
It is actually,
Really?
it is very doable, and it is practical. But as I keep repeating, it's not a magic bullet. It's not an instant cure. You got to have patience for this, patience with yourself. And, in all of this, you must also learn to truly enjoy the journey. The journey is the reward.
Right.
It's not that there is this one place, after 8 months when suddenly you will wake up and find yourself in a state. No. The journey is the reward. And as you keep focusing more on the journey, you will gradually slip into the state, and it doesn't even matter whether you know whether you're in that state or not. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Because you're enjoying the day. And you're, feeling life is getting easier. And of course, you will notice all of these things in retrospect.
Right.
But that's the journey. And so if you must have that, and I think that's a bigger challenge for most people, because we are so used to this instant magic pill type thing and being focused on outcome. So people ask me, how do I measure? I met somebody this morning who told me that she was developing this huge framework on how to become wellness, to develop wellness for a human being and all that. And she was saying it was difficult to implement it because she said, I had, it was a very scientific method, and there were all these so many measurements that we had, and it had to be, and I didn't have the heart to tell her that it'll never work. Because 35 measurements of wellness are not wellness. They're 35 measurements of wellness. They're not wellness.
Wow. You didn't tell her.
I didn't tell her. But I should.
Maybe she's going to find
Yeah.
out.
No, but I'm going to do that, because at some point it's,
Yeah.
she's a well-meaning person, somebody
Yeah.
who really wants to make a difference. And I think it's important to know this. But the fact of the matter is, there is a difference between the experience of something and the measurement of something. The measurement of something is a pure, low-quality, intellectual abstraction of the real thing. Experience of it is the real thing.
Right. So it takes you away from being present.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly.
Oh, so there's something else I want to touch on, which is the difference between happiness and joy, and how that connects to the state of well-being.
Got it. Okay. So I think let me talk about joy. The reason I want to talk about joy is because in a lot of literature about well-being in the Indic knowledge, joy is used as a word or a state to denote that you've got to a place of well-being. But the difference is, the concept of joy in the Indic system is very different from the concept of joy in this sort of modern way in which we look at it, right? So in the modern world, what is joy, right? Joy is like super abundant, exuberant happiness.
Super happy.
Super happy, right? That's not how Indic Wellbeing looks at it. What Indic Wellbeing says is happiness is an emotion. And like many other emotions, they're transient. It comes and it goes. Joy is a state. State means it's how you are. It doesn't come and it doesn't go. It's how you are. So to achieve that state of joy is the equivalent of achieving well-being, right? So that's the basic premise of joy.
So sort of joy and well-being are sort of synonymous.
Conflict, yeah, they're synonymous. Mm-hmm. Joy is the manifestation of the being in a state of well-being. So what is being in the state of joy? In the Indic system, and this, as I say this sentence in all our salons, for example, I'm forced to repeat it almost every time, so I probably repeat it here as well. Joy in the Indic system is a state where you engage with life. The intensity with which you engage with life remains the same, irrespective of the emotion that you're going through at that time or the circumstance that you're going through at that time.
I know, it's a bit of a head scratcher.
It's a bit of a head scratcher. But, the one good way to sort of get a sense of this is to actually take a couple of examples. So let me take one, which I find quite useful, which is, think of yourself when you wake up first thing in the morning. Waking up. Now you wake up, here's a scenario. You wake up and you know that today is going to be a good day. For some reason you know that. 2 weeks ago something happened and something is about to happen. So today is going to be a good day. So what's our reaction to waking up when we know that? We jump out of bed, a little bit more active in our brushing our teeth and getting ready and all of that. So the whole morning sort of goes in a nice...
You feel uplifted. You're ready to take on the day.
Correct. You're ready to take on the day. Now flip it. Flip the situation. You know that today is going to be a bad day. For similarly, some reasons that you're aware of. We all know this sometimes, right? So what's our most natural response to our feeling that today is going to be a bad day?
Retreat. Not want to get out of bed.
Yeah, I don't want to get up. Right? I just don't want to get up. Or if I do get up, then everything...
A little sluggish.
Sluggish, right? Everything is a little slower. So in both these situations, what has happened? The degree of our intensity of engagement with life, the quality of our engagement with life has changed depending on the emotion that we are feeling at that point. So on one day, our emotion was happiness or uplifted. So on another day, it was a little this thing. So then that affected our engagement. In the Indic system, joy is a state where independent of those two types of emotion that you have, your engagement with life would be the same. You would get up in the exact same way. You would have the same anticipation of the day and life in either circumstance. It will not change basis emotion. So emotions will continue to exist, but your engagement with life will remain uniform.
So if I'm super happy, I'm going to engage no differently than if I'm completely pissed off or upset about something. I can still be upset.
Yeah, and you will still be upset. But your engagement with life, the intensity with which you engage and show up for life will not be different. And this is a problem for most people because people can't in their head see the difference between, if I'm unhappy, how can I?
Right.
You can be. You can be. And that's the state that we've got to get to this thing, because engagement with life does not have to be connected to your emotion.
So is being optimistic is an emotion?
Yeah, I mean, meaning feeling happy about, when you say being optimistic, feeling happy about something that is coming. Anticipation, positive, there's an emotion there. And so when there's an emotion there, it's an emotion. That's fine. That's perfectly all right. But I'm saying...
So that there's no emotion attached to the state.
The state is independent of emotion. State is independent of emotion and state is independent of circumstance. Because typically circumstance gives rise to emotion, right? So, you're ill, for example. It doesn't change the thing. Physically, you might this thing, but your intensity of engagement does not. Or other, some other circumstances, this thing. So, so it can happen.
Cool. Interesting. That one takes a little bit of processing, a little time.
Yeah,
to
but I
sit
think
with
it's an
it.
important one
yeah.
because to understand the difference between state and emotion is very, very important for you to get to this place of joy and this place of well-being. And it's not necessary to think a lot about it. What's important is to go on the journey of that alignment, and what you will find is you will find yourself in that place. Thinking won't get you to that place.
Right. So just one, the word trigger is a big word right now. People are using it a lot, certainly in the workplace too. Like, I'm being triggered. Everybody's triggered all over the place.
Right.
Do you get, if you're in this state, is triggers an emotion?
Triggers. So when people talk about trigger, what they're saying is emotion has changed my state.
That's what a trigger is.
That's what they're actually saying, I feel. When people say I'm triggered, they're actually saying that I have let an emotion change my state.
Which is a reaction to something.
Which is a reaction to something. So I'm saying emotions, there are reactions to emotions. I'm not saying there are no, but the difference between trigger and saying I'm reacting to an emotion is that it seems to me, and I don't know exactly what people are saying, but it seems to me that people are saying that my state itself I'm losing control. It seems to be a very disproportionate response to an emotion, seems to be what people are saying. And if that is the case, then clearly it proves once again that, the need for alignment is acute.
So it doesn't mean you can still be emotional if you want to be emotional, right? You can still have all of that, but your state doesn't get influenced.
So your engagement with life doesn't get influenced. So for example, if it's a day where you feel, oh, it's going to be a bad day, I have to solve, let's say, something today. So your engagement with life is no different. You will go show up for life and solve. The same way as you would have shown up for life to savor something really. Today you're going to win. You have won the Olympic gold medal last evening, and you're going to get the medal today, right? So that you're going to savor that. The same way you'll show up for life as you say, okay, I have to solve this today. So that's the point. That's the state that we need to find ourselves in.
So we need more people in the state of joy.
We need more people in the state of what we call joy in the Indic system. Right.